New Hampshire just made Bitcoin history, and almost no one noticed. So most people have no idea what just happened in New Hampshire. This is a tiny American state that I grew up right next to. I grew up in Massachusetts, and this move could become one of the biggest turning points in Bitcoin's entire adoption story. So what's the headline? So New Hampshire's Business Finance Authority just approved a $100 million Bitcoin-backed bond, the first in U.S. history. What do you think about this, Dom?
I think it's amazing, and it's surprising me. I mean, this news came out, as far as I'm aware, within the past 2 days. But I mean, it's pretty silent on crypto Twitter and Bitcoin Twitter, and even on sort of mainstream news outlets. I mean, you wouldn't expect there to be much there, but it's really a staggering turn of events. I mean, New Hampshire has always been sort of one of the game changers, and I'm sure you know more about the history than I do. But obviously, this comes off the back of them announcing a strategic reserve. But more importantly, it's just the scale of what this means, because it seems like, I mean, most people read the headline, they don't even understand it. But it's really a big thing. So maybe for our viewers, I'll start just explaining maybe a bit of background about what is a bond. So a bond is basically like a loan. Think of it like an IOU. Yeah. Now, different people can offer IOUs. Different entities can offer IOUs. So in this case, it's the state of New Hampshire. And the specific type of bond they've offered is called a municipal bond, or a muni. Now, think of it just like it's a loan raised by a city or a state to fund public projects. So investors, people like me and you, or larger players, can buy that bond, and then the government pays them back with interest. So in the same way that you have your cash in a bank account, and you might be surprised to understand the reason that your bank can give you interest on your money sat in the bank account is because you've in fact lent them the money. You don't actually own it, but we'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, the municipal bond is basically the government IOU.
Right. So what we're going to cover, thanks for that background, because it helps to understand, number one, what New Hampshire did, number two, why it matters, and how this connects Bitcoin to the and New Hampshire to the $140 trillion global bond market, right? And really how this impacts long-term investors who are, whether they want exposure to the Bitcoin market through bonds, or they're just tracking how nation states are actually, how states are actually adopting and actually starting this Bitcoin game theory, right?
That's it.
We talked about it in a previous video.
Absolutely. And what we touched on in those previous videos, and what I think David's alluding to, for those of you that haven't yet watched it on Game Theory, is there is immense power with the first mover effect, meaning that once a nation does things once, especially by getting things across legal hurdles like this, it sets precedent. It lays out a game plan that others can follow. So it wouldn't surprise me if you start to see other states that have shown pro-Bitcoin stances, like Florida, basically follow in their footsteps. They may use New Hampshire as a test bed, watch it, see how it performs, see what the uptake is, see the performance, and then slowly follow in. So yeah, really big step in the fact that it can be a real game changer and open it up to, well, states and even countries worldwide.
Yeah. The thing is, Bitcoin is perceived, at least on the government level, very risky, right? And what's shocking about this is this U.S. state, New Hampshire, is allowing public financing to be collateralized by Bitcoin, right? The same way that you'd use real estate or treasuries. So yeah, and what's interesting is it's 160% collateralized loan, right? Collateralized bond. So what does that really mean? Like, why do you think it's so high? It seems really high to have 160% LTV.
The borrower in this will post Bitcoin as collateral with $100 million bond, and $160 million in Bitcoin is posted with their partner, which I understand is BitGo. So I think they're using BitGo to basically collateralize the loan. So then the state, in this case New Hampshire, is only the conduit. Yeah. So they approve the deal, but take zero repayment risk. Yeah, because it's over collateralized with Bitcoin, meaning if Bitcoin falls to 130% collateral, it's automatically liquidated to fully repay the investors. So the borrower gets cash without selling the Bitcoin, which is the major upside here. It's not a taxable sale. They keep their long-term Bitcoin upside. And the investors get a safe, as in the people that buy the bonds, get a safe Bitcoin secured municipal yield backed by Bitcoin, not by the taxpayers.
So let me understand this.
It is a win-win.
Wow. So the state takes zero risk, right? And New Hampshire gets all the credit risk protection, but none of the exposure to the Bitcoin volatility, right?
That's it. So the way to think about it is they're over collateralizing so much with the Bitcoin that if the price falls, is my understanding, below that 130, so they start at 160%, price of Bitcoin falls, it goes down to 130%. So 160 million drops down to 130 million. The value of the bond is still 100 million. So it's automatically liquidated there. So they're not taking the risk. In the event of a crash, because those bonds are set to auto liquidate at a collateralization level of 130%, it means that there's basically no risk to the state or to the investors. The investors are always fully repaid. And that coincides with the way that municipal bonds work. Municipal bonds are ultra conservative. Yeah. So by opening up Bitcoin to these type of products, I think is a huge indicator, because it shows that Bitcoin, at least by one state, and states in many ways are equivalent to small countries, but it shows that they're basically treated as high-grade collateral. Yeah. Yes. And I loved what you said. I love what you said at the start about it opens up Bitcoin to the 140 trillion plus bond market, because there are investors looking for that.
And on a US level, the US market alone is $58.2 trillion. So this bond makes Bitcoin institutional collateral, right? It's not a speculative asset. It's not an experiment, but it's collateral. You know, that's quite significant.
Yeah, absolutely. It signals, I mean, the level of trust in Bitcoin's reliability that I think it sends to not just other states in the US, but also to other countries and the big banks, I think is really something to take into account.
Right.
Because
sorry?
No, I was just going to say, I kind of see it as, and I kind of mentioned, as a sort of operational template. It's kind of like if you showed me how to do something and you make a success of it. I mean, to be honest, even if there's just moderate performance, you show me how to do something and you just do it okay, it doesn't mean that that would disincentivize me from doing the same thing. It might incentivize me to do the same thing, but do it in a better way. And I think that type of thing is what we're now going to see happen more and more regularly amongst other states like Arizona, Texas, Florida.
Yes, that's an excellent point, Dom, because this isn't a tech company, right? This isn't a hedge fund or an ETF. This is a U.S. state using Bitcoin in public finance. So you're right, Texas, Florida, Wyoming. Let's think about the history of New Hampshire, right? So they first started really shifting their regulations. Well, go back to their state motto: live free or die, right? That's just incredible. They're kind of one of the founding colonies of the United States of America that actually wanted to really claim independence and really start a new world, right? A new way of governing. So they started back in, I think it was 2024. This is last year. The state treasury, basically they became the first state to legally permit its treasury to allocate up to 5% into Bitcoin, right, and other digital assets. But they were the leading state, even back then, to actually institutionalize Bitcoin.
That's it. Remind me again of that. I hadn't heard that before. Remind me again of what their state slogan is.
So it's it's live free or die. It's on the license plates of all cars there.
No, amazing. Shout out to New Hampshire, because I mean that perfectly aligns with the ethos of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is freedom money. It is about having a separation of money and state, having something, whether it's you consider it money or an asset, that is completely uncensorable, that can be self-custody, that you can have full ownership of. And I think that perfectly aligns, by the sounds of it, with what New Hampshire stands for. And I think it's no surprise that they were the first state to step into the Bitcoin strategic reserve ring. I think it's fantastic.
Yes. So I expect other states to follow in, as you were alluding to. And what state do you think is going to be next?
Oh, well, it sounds to me like you want a little bet, but we don't bet. This is a family channel. If I had to place my money personally, I'm going to go Texas. Yeah. And the reason for that is I see so many of the AI companies that were traditionally Silicon Valley companies moving down there. And yes, that does include crypto. And I think that all that brain power and all that wealth feeds into politics. I think you'll start to see more and more lobbying. I think that Texas has already shown a very, well, not very, but a positive outlook towards Bitcoin and crypto. And so Texas would be my bet. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Wyoming. So isn't Cynthia Lummis the kind of the leader helping to get government and state government fully supporting Bitcoin? So yeah, they're all watching. They're all taking note and saying, okay, well, we have to. It's game theory, as you said. It's game theory playing out.
It is. And I mean, we didn't mention it in our game theory video, but you raise a really good point. So the Lummis bill, I mean, it may be renamed, but basically Cynthia Lummis is championing, she's a big Bitcoiner, and she is championing this bill, which basically wants to take President Trump's strategic reserve bill to the next level. So Trump's bill is signed by executive order, meaning the next president who comes in can undo it. Cynthia is seeking not only to legitimize that bill, so get bipartisan support behind it from both Republicans and Democrats and sign it into law. She's actually going to take it far beyond that and saying, we're going to make sure that we actually accumulate Bitcoin, and not just small amounts, 1 million Bitcoin, and hold it for 20 years. Now, looking at that from a game theory perspective, we always think about game theory as us versus them, or player one versus player two, or friend versus foe. So US versus China, US versus Russia, India, the EU versus the US, etc. But even within a single country, there can be cities, there can be states competing against the federal level. And by that I mean, if you believe at a federal level something is going to be decreed, and at a federal level something is going to be moved forward, and you're dealing with a finite supply, well then maybe if you have the power, you may want to take steps to actually front run your own federal government, because you can now acquire Bitcoin and these finite and a finite asset before the federal level government comes in and makes it arguably unaffordable and takes out a lot of the upside. So yes, if the US were to attain 1 million Bitcoin and buy aggressively, they would be in a very good strategic position. But the nation state that runs them and has actually bought more has actually bought significantly amounts more comparative to their size as a state, could arguably become the wealthiest state in the country.
Wow, that's shocking to actually when you put it like that, Dom. A lot of people right now are confused by the macro environment, and the markets are volatile. the AI bubble looks stretched. I know we probably will have another video about what the AI bubble really looks like, and if it is a bubble. Interest rates are still uncertain of whether the Fed will actually cut interest rates. ETFs have kind of large outflows, but also net positive inflows. Bitcoin is pulling back from its all-time high, right? We're back at about $90,000. So at times like these, investors get very nervous, right? But here's what New Hampshire's move tells us, right? Bitcoin is slowly and now officially becoming really it's being upgraded from a risky asset to a strategic monetary asset. I think that's a really important message for kind of long-term investors to hear.
One of the pieces of feedback that we've had in our videos is it'd be good to understand when we talk about these things, just how impactful are they? So David and I have put together a rating scale, and it's rated 10 to -10. So 10 is the very best thing that could happen for Bitcoin. And we put things like the USA or the European Union announcing not just strategic reserves, but aggressive accumulation. That would be an example of a 10. An example of a -10 would be something like quantum computing breaking the Bitcoin algorithm, and breaking Bitcoin. And on that scale, we've rated this one a 5. And just to give you full transparency, as a summary, we see it as this particular news story as a major structural milestone for the US for reasons we've just described. It's the first integration of Bitcoin into the municipal bond market. And as David said, that opens it up to 140 trillion potentially worldwide global bond market. It demonstrates Bitcoin as accepted collateral in a highly, highly conservative sector. As I said, nothing gets more conservative than municipal bonds. And it's a potential blueprint for other states and debt markets. But just to keep everything in perspective, the reason we've marked it as a 5 is because this is not by any means at global or sovereign level. So just keep that in mind. This is just one state, a very small state in the grand scheme of things, but it is still a positive news story nevertheless. But, you know, it's still probably nothing, right?
I love that.
Anyway, unless you've got any further comments for our listeners, David, I think we will wrap up.
Yeah, I think it's great. Nicely put.
Thank you. And that's it, guys, from today. Thank you for, as always, tuning in. If you do want to book an appointment with myself or David, please visit our website at 1%BTC. You can do that by scanning the QR code on the screen. Please don't forget that David and I are not financial advisors, and nothing that you've seen in this video is considered financial advice. Investing in anything is risky, and Bitcoin is particularly volatile and carries its own risk. But don't forget, that being said, most will miss it, most will mock it, and most will wait until it's too late. But the 1%, they're with conviction.
Be a 1%er.
Thanks, guys.
Great. Later. Bye-bye.